I'm Aryeh Schwartz alongside Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr Show, where it's all about the W. It's almost the Olympic/All-Star break, and the power struggle in the W is real. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the show. Excited to be here alongside Rachel Galligan. Let's dive right in. There's a lot of hot topics, a lot of interesting things going on in the W these days. But maybe the most pressing, the thing that I want to debate with you or discuss with you, Rachel, because I thought we disagreed, but apparently we agree. So let's just dive in. The All-Star Game voting process. Do you include Team USA? Do you not include Team USA? My take on this, and apparently I don't know, whatever. My take on it is this is a player's legacy. All-Star Game votes, first team this, second team that, all of these things are legacy builders. They are what defines a player's legacy when they stop playing. And so for me, when I look at, how am I going to handle voting for this? How should people have the perspective of voting for it? I personally think I ignore the Olympics, if I'm being blunt. And I think maybe there is a after effect, a repercussion of that, maybe that now we're going to see a lot of, for lack of a better term, substitute players get all-star nods, and that will benefit their legacy and their career. And you know what? Another thing that's really interesting, all-star nods, they get you more money overseas. They get you more money during the offseason and during a re-signing next time. So when I look at this, I think, and I'm curious what you think, Rachel, I'm voting as if the Olympics aren't happening. And look, that's just what's going to happen, right? We're going to get replacement players, but I can only vote for the players I think have deserved an all-star nod this year. What do you think?
So is there truly an argument that anyone who's on Team USA should be left off the ballot for all-star?
I don't know if that's necessarily the argument. I'm trying to remember, and full transparency, I was going to look this up for the episode, but the baby got me distracted because I feel like there was a automatic nod because you're playing in the game. Right. If you're on Team USA, you're going to get the accolade of being on an all-star team that year.
That's how they handled it last time.
That's what I thought. And to me personally, I think that's messed up. I would use more vulgar language, but I'm a father of two now. I just think that you're just messing with the legacy. It's a huge honor that you're on Team USA, but that doesn't mean that you were an all-star this year. There's going to be players, and maybe we'll run down the list when we get closer to All-Star break or to the All-Star game. But there's going to be players on the Team USA that I probably wouldn't vote in for All-Star, whether it's because they haven't played enough games so far, whether it's because, they've been playing good, but their stats just aren't as good as some other players in a similar position. So I don't know how, what do you think?
No, I want to go back. I remember the last All-Star or the last Olympic year, there was like an asterisk in terms of if you were on Team USA. I don't remember if it was all of them or if you still had to be voted in. I'd have to double check that. Again, we're just chit-chatting and talking about hot topics. I mean, I feel personally they're two separate entities. The Team USA was created in its own right by its own committee, and that's formulated in one way. I don't think that should have any bearing whatsoever on being a WNBA All-Star. So I'm with you. I agree. I think, you go through the voting process based on the current play up until the end of June or whatever it ends up being. And if you make the All-Star team based off the voting of all the different fans, media, then you're an all-star. Now, clearly there has to be some sort of process of replacement players or, people being able to, basically there's going to be more all-stars than usual in an Olympic year, but I don't know that you should get an automatic all-star just for being on Team USA, although I would expect most would. I would. Mm-hmm. Probably all, if we're being honest, but I definitely, I think we're on the same page with it. I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting topic to analyze, and I forget we do this every 4 years. And then of course I forget what happens 4 years later and how we handle this process. But yeah, I mean, I think we're on the same page. I think I would handle it as two separate entities, allow the voting to play out based on the play of the WNBA season, obviously, as it should be. and then have a process in play for those players who cannot be at All-Star, to have those replacement or substitutes or, a backup, if you will.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I'm going to throw this out there again, because I personally don't think with the 12 teams that we have, with only having 12 teams, maybe once we get closer to 20, I would support this. I'm not a fan of, I've seen this thrown out there, a 5-on-5 of, up-and-comers, rookies or sophomores, one of those more exciting types of game things that you see in the men's league and all these variety of different sports leagues. They try and think of other fun events because, let's be honest, the skills contest is the most boring thing ever and no one pays attention to it. We love the 3-point contest, but give me like a rookie versus vets versus old heads, sophomores. Give me a couple teams in a 3-on-3 tournament. I think that would be something cool, something out there, a little bit more fun. Nobody cares about the skills contest. It's so stupid. You don't follow the refs don't even follow the rules on it. People are missing their shots and just running through it. Whatever.
I don't think I've ever watched one. I really don't.
And there's a reason, Rachel.
I just don't. I mean,
you were at one of the All-Stars and you didn't watch it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't even know that I watch All-Star games, if we're honest. But that's a whole other conversation.
So that is a whole other conversation we'll get into later, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I would love, especially with Unrivaled, hopefully coming this offseason, it would be cool to see some sort of partnership in the near future where they play some sort of 3-on-3 game during the All-Star break, All-Star game weekend, whatever it may be. Okay, another fun topic before we dive in to the top 3 teams in this league was a question that was floated to me in the Winsidr Slack when I said, hey, y'all, we're recording a podcast. Give us some topics.
What should we...
I really like this one. Can Phoenix be a real contender if they're leaning this hard into living and dying by the 3? The first thing I just want to say is if Brittany Griner's healthy, or if Brittany Griner's not healthy on the court, heck no, they cannot be a real contender if they're living and dying by the 3 without BG. And then I'll pass it to you to give much more intellectual, smart, whatever take. But like historically, or not historically, from a intelligent basketball mind perspective, Rachel, do you think it's possible for a team to be so reliant like they are when they are so hot and so cold? Because the teams that have won are teams that, well, they don't rely so heavily. Like they succeed so heavily on the 3, but they don't rely on it like that.
Yeah, it all hinges on Brittany Griner, in my opinion. Everything from both ends of the floor, being able to throw it to her, and she's been dominant. She's having a phenomenal season in the few games she's been able to play so far. But just from a rim protection and a defensive standpoint as well, I mean, you can't replace that. There's nobody that can come off the bench and bring what Griner does. The drop off is so massive. Can the Phoenix Mercury sustain that with Griner? I think it's possible. I think this team is vastly different, even with Rebecca Allen in the rotation. This team is complete. They're more than, a couple dimensions. They're deeper in terms of the ways they can play, how they can space the floor, how they can scheme, how they can defend. Having Griner in there as an anchor and as someone that you can rely upon to throw the ball to protect the paint. I can't stress enough how vital it is that she's on the court if this team is serious about being a contender. If she's not on the court, they're not serious. You might be able to get hot and knock down some shots, but in the course of a series, you're not winning a series because you're going to go cold one day, and this team can't defend well enough, to go on and I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I think it all, and that's not a knock on the analytics and the style of play and the shots that they get up. There's a reason that's in play. And I think, you've got players like Kalia Copper, who's having a phenomenal season and has fit this system so well. It's so exciting to watch Copper play, but it's like, when Griner's not in the equation, it's like you're playing with like one hand tied behind your back. That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I hate agreeing with you. I'm completely with you. And honestly, I would even say they're playing with like More than that. They're playing like freaking horse rules. Like you have to hit it with one leg up,
Yep.
one arm tied behind the back, off the backboard, whatever. If you have BG, let me remind people about the last time we saw BG at full form, where she was MVP level play. She carried this Mercury team to a finals. They ran out of gas and end up losing in the finals to the Chicago Sky. But when you think back to that BG and you pair that, at the time it was like, okay, Skylar, cool, you can pair them together. DT is on her way down. The rest of this team is pretty weak. This team's much better rounded in some ways, and having that double star of Ka and BG, that's the ability that provides them an opportunity to win a championship and to be a contender. If they are not able to have those two stars, that's where the questions come in, because I will preach this to the day I'm gone. To win in the W, you need that one superstar. Yes, no question. But you need that next tier superstar, one or two of them, performing at a very high level for you to win. So BG needs to be at a very high level, at that MVP level, if you ask me, and Ka needs to be up there too. And we've seen that so far. But the teams that I think are a little bit more, that's a fun team to talk about. The teams that kind of rack our brain, and Rachel and I like argue for hours in text messages going back and forth, are the top three teams right now. New York, Connecticut, Minnesota. That's not in a specific order. I think, the Winsidr Power Rankings came out before New York lost to Phoenix last night, and we had, by one vote differentiating them, New York above Connecticut. And I think a lot of that comes from the way Connecticut plays. Rachel, we were talking about this before we hopped on the episode. Give me a little peek into the mind of the Post of why Connecticut, it's like watching a PBS documentary, watching them play. You're going to get good information, and you're going to get to the end of it, and you're going to get what you want. It's not going to be the most exciting, riveting, jaw-dropping, cliffhanging episodes.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I just think Connecticut is just steady. They're just steady. Obviously, you have Dewana Bonner. You've got Carrington, who's playing exceptionally well. Probably leader, most improved so far this season. Ty Harris has stepped up and been exactly what this team needs her to be. AT, being AT. Bree Jones, I think every single game continues to find her rhythm a little bit more, find her confidence a little bit more. Coming off that injury, it was going to take some time. I mean, I think when I look at Connecticut, the thing that's impressed me the most is they never get rattled. They never get rattled, and they're strong enough on both ends of the floor. Obviously, defensively, this team, when they're on a line and they're moving and they're rotating and their backside rotations and their ball screen coverages and everything is just on point. You watch the way that team moves when the ball moves in the air defensively, and you can see how locked in they are and how in tune they are with one another. And that part of that is being vets. Part of it is just having the skill of being a good defender. Another part of it is just the consistency of playing together and having a Bree Jones who's that anchor of the defense. We've always talked about that. She doesn't get enough credit for what she brings on the defensive end of the floor. So when you're so steady and when you're so strong defensively, and obviously your offense is good enough, I mean, it's not like...
Rachel, let me drop a few things on you real quick while you were talking. Of the top three teams in points per game, Vegas, New York, Minnesota, where does Connecticut fall? 6 to 7 points less at sixth place. When you look at rebounds per game, where do they land in the rebound game? They're 10th in the league with rebounds per game. Assists, they're similarly middle of the pack, lower of the pack, 7th. Turnovers, they're doing quite nicely. They're third lowest or best. However, I got to explain that because I want people to be confused. But the one thing that's really standing out to me that they are top three in, field goal percentage.
Yeah. And defensive rating. They lead the league in their defensive rating. And I mean, so I think basically I'm rambling on about the Connecticut Sun, but they're good on both ends of the floor. The right players have stepped up to be what they needed them to be so far this season in the role that they've been asked to play. but they don't get rattled. This team is not out there, getting, all caught up into a lot of the noise, getting frustrated when a team goes on a run. They're just steady. They're consistent. It feels like they have a healthy locker room. It feels like this team is, a connected unit. The biggest question I have is, of course, we're always going to say, can they stay healthy? Knock on wood. But at some point, does it kind of fizz out? Like they've been so steady, they've been so strong and consistent throughout the start of the season and the first month of the season. And maybe that's a credit to kind of the continuity of this team. At some point, does it fizzle out a little bit as some of these other teams start to connect together and start to gel a little bit more and things start coming together? That's what I'm looking for with Connecticut. If they can continue this type of consistency throughout the course of the season, I will be overly impressed. And I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm just saying that would be an incredible feat if this team really just stays this steady all season long and doesn't hit some massive bumps.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Forget health. Forget health. For me, it's the Connecticut Sun. It's like, okay, we've been here before. We've seen you have hot starts. We've seen you be the number one team in the league going into the playoffs, and then it fizzles out. It fizzles out in the playoffs. You can say, oh, that's because AT came back. Oh, that's because this isn't dynamic. At the end of the day, we've seen this movie so many times. We know the ending is heartbreak. This is not a happy ending rom-com. And so I need to see them show me something new. We have new elements on this team. Do I see elite offensive production? No. And that's always been my question. I'm not seeing elite three-point shooting either. So I have the same questions I've had for years before, except now they only have one loss as opposed to other years when they've had one or two. So I just think they're flying closer to the sun right now. The question is, can they stay in that orbit or are they going to drop and burn off their wings? I just realized that was probably a crazy, ridiculous pun. I didn't even mean to say flying so close to the sun. Then the next team, the New York Liberty. I mean, tough loss. They're a team where I think I get a lot of flack for this. I have not done the in-depth research I keep meaning to on the difficulty of schedule rankings of New York versus Connecticut and Minnesota. But I look at New York, and New York is a team that, look, they're doing what we expected from them. Everyone expected them to be a top 3 team this year. Were there questions of how their new additions are going to meld into this team? Yes. But what we've seen is the core of this team, JJ and Stewie and Laney, really vibe even better. And obviously Sabrina too, and finding ways to excel in new forms. We've seen JJ step it up to a ridiculous level, a player who has been playing out of her mind. Stewie's doing Stewie things. Sabrina setting records for most games in a row, or youngest player games in a row with like 43s or something like that. They're a historic team. I don't know. At some point, it's like all these records are like cool, but we're really getting into the weeds. Like, just give me, this is the best free throw percentage, this is the best 3-pointing percentage in league. You know what I mean? Like, don't give me in the past 5 games when down by 3 points, nobody's hit more threes than whatever. The New York Liberty, I guess for you, do you I think the New York Liberty honestly are similar to the Connecticut Sun in my mind, where it's like, I'm not like going to be impressed and think like neither of them are dominating and so far above and beyond every other team in this league. It's more so like, you're a top team. Obviously there's teams that are nowhere near you, but let's get to the playoffs before I start crowning you a champ.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. And I was talking with one of my old college teammates actually yesterday, and we were just kind of talking about the game and her thoughts about the Liberty loss. And I was like, the interesting thing about this year is it really doesn't feel like there's that like complete dominant force in this league. Any given night, anything can happen. And we didn't have that last year. It didn't feel this way last year. Like there was a very clear gap between certain portions. We talked about tiers. Remember the tiers we used to make? It was like the Aces and the Liberty. And then, we had our next grouping, and then there was like a massive drop off. I don't feel that way this year. Like it's much more difficult to go through that type of exercise. And maybe that's a good idea for the next podcast. But when it comes to Liberty, I mean, I do want to push back. I'm excited to watch this team play from the standpoint of you've got a player like Jonquel Jones who's putting up dominant performances. And I think what's fun about the Liberty is you don't have this burden of like A'ja Wilson is going to do what A'ja, we're going to get to her in a little bit, but A'ja Wilson's doing what she's doing night in and night out, dominating, the best player in the league. Okay. But with the Liberty, you don't feel like there's this massive pressure for any given star on this team to be consistently doing that night in and night out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you look at last night's game, Brianna Stewart finished with 28. Okay. Like the whole starting lineup was in double figures. A couple nights ago, John Cole Jones was the one that put up a new career high. And so I really enjoy watching the Liberty play this year. I don't even think that game last night, like, and when you look at the box score, and I want to go back and rewatch it again today, just because it looked like a fun game. I mean, from the offensive production, but like, it's interesting because the Liberty, a lot of the toughness categories that a coach would look at in order, like, okay, we got to win these to win games. They out-rebounded Phoenix. They did a better job at taking care of the basketball. They did a better job of getting to the free throw line. I mean, those are like the huge categories, and when like coaches at all levels will look at those things and say, okay, we got to win these things. I wouldn't even say like just studying the box score. It came down to literally just more shots went in, and they were more efficient from the 3-point line. For Phoenix to go 15 of 30 and shoot 50%, Rebecca Allen hits 5 threes, Diana Taurasi hits 4. Versus New York Liberty, okay, they went 18 of 42. They only shot 43%. Like, that's literally the difference in my mind of this type of game. And even like second chance points, New York won that category. So it's not even like they lost in the areas that they needed to, win it. They won those types of things. It really just came down to shot making ability in the second half. So anyway, I'm going on my tangent as usual, but I enjoy this New York Liberty team more than I did last year. Like, I get excited to watch this team more than last year. This isn't a knock on them last year, but like, I feel like there's more of an edge. I also feel like they're missing a huge piece. The timeline of Courtney Vandersloot's return, I'm not sure about that, but like, they're still playing very, very well without her. And I think this thing is very much still up for grabs. I don't know. I feel good about the Liberty. I feel like even the loss last night is more of a reflection of the totality of the league and the competitiveness of any given night. Anything can happen, and less about, the Liberty, they sucked. I don't think they sucked last night. I thought they were pretty damn good.
Yeah.
It's just Phoenix hit more shots, and their analytics and the way that they play ended up working in their favor. That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, and I will say, like, I don't mean to compare them to a PBS documentary also. A lot more fun, a lot more enjoyable to watch.
I love your comparisons are just so, like, where does your mind even come up with this stuff?
It is a bee running around.
I wish I could do that. I wish I could, but I can't. My mind doesn't work that way.
No, you don't. No, I completely agree with you. I think the Liberty a lot more fun to watch. And watching last night, even though I dozed off, then woke up at 4 a.m. to a crying baby and had to rewatch the last 4 minutes. A lot of it came down to, like you said, missing shots, making shots.
Yeah.
And that sounds super overly simplistic, and it kind of sometimes is. When the shot is falling at the important moments, that's what's going to matter. That's what's going to define. And now, to one of the greatest dynasties in WNBA history, the Minnesota Lynx. No, Minnesota Lynx are a fun team because while Nafisa has definitely arisen to an MVP caliber over, you could say, last year, this year, she still struggles at games. And when she struggles, the rest of the team steps up. And what we've seen from this team is depth. They're letting it rip from three. They're still leading the league in 3-point shooting percentage, I believe. They're still putting up amazing clips. And defensively, they hang their hat on their defense. They get it going. And there's going to be times where they're going to struggle offensively. Everybody has that. They are not the dominant Las Vegas Aces last year and the year before that. The only Las Vegas Aces were that, right? But they're finding ways to use their depth. Dorca's finally getting her sea legs on this side of the pond. Nafisa, we talked about. Kayla McBride, we're going to discuss in a little bit because she's just shooting out of her mind, playing ridiculous with the confidence. Chechi Zandalicini, a player who has so much length, so much speed, and three-point shooting ability. And heck, they're not even playing Sika. They're not even playing Pili. Like, this team is getting more out of Bridget Carlton. This team is getting more out of Courtney Williams, and Natisha Heidemann, while has struggled mightily shooting this year, is finding other ways to impact this team and be a professional and be a player who, look, she's been on Connecticut for many years. She understands how to succeed, even if you're not hitting ridiculous amounts of shots and putting up great points. The Minnesota Lynx, I think as a someone who grew up a Minnesota sports fan, I'm able to kind of ignore the dynasty years of the Lynx when I look at the Lynx, and I sometimes fall prey to Minnesota sports and thinking that this team is a pretender. But the more games go by and you're like, no, they're a contender. Rachel, simplistically, pretender or contender?
I've seen enough. I don't see why this team doesn't have a shot at it. I mean, you have to put them in that category. There's probably at least 4 teams in my mind. This thing feels as wide open as it's ever felt before. I mean, like, can any of us really predict who's going to win this thing? We have no idea. I kind of have Minnesota in that same category as Connecticut in terms of just that consistency on both ends of the floor, the steadiness, the inability to really get too rattled. 2 of their 3 losses have come by 1 point. 1 point. Really, I mean, they lost to Connecticut by 1, and they lost to Phoenix by 1. I think that was right before this 4-game win streak. And then back on May 29th, they got kind of routed there by the Aces by about 14. So, like, why not? When you've got a team that can defend, you've got a team that can score, you've got players like Napheesa Collier, who is one of the top players in the WNBA, doesn't get enough credit or shine, in my opinion. And so always want to give my props to Collier because she's such a force on this team. But then you've got Kayla McBride leading the league in 3-point percentage, right under 50%, and has been able to consistently do that for 14 games. I think the biggest thing with Minnesota, it's kind of similar to Connecticut. The bright players have stepped up. Alana Smith was one of the best additions a team could have added in this offseason. Courtney Williams has played her role, done exactly what she needs to do. I definitely think, though, when it comes to these 2 teams, you look at the chemistry. The chemistry is there. You didn't see this with the Minnesota Lynx for the last few years. You had certain personalities and people in the locker room. It did not seem like they were a connected unit. Clearly, this offseason, there was a big overhaul. Some players left. There was a lot of changes. I thought that was huge. And I think this team gets along really well. They're connected. They're a unit. Everyone has accepted their roles, and their chemistry is great. And that's what I see with both Connecticut and Minnesota. And when you've got teams that have that and they're steady on both ends of the ball, like, yes, you have to put them in the contender conversation because that's consistency deep in the season, late in a series. Again, assuming and hoping everyone stays healthy, yes, they can absolutely go make a run at this thing from what I've seen so far.
Love it. My family will appreciate your little clip right there. All right. A fun topic. Shout out to Jasmine Harper. WNBA dominators. There's now, obviously, as Rachel pointed out when we started to talk about this, there's one and done we could talk about.
Started going and talking about all. I was like, hold on. Go ahead and finish your thought. But I just want to preface it by saying I stopped him, everybody. I stopped him.
There's many players dominating in the W right now in a variety of different ways. There is one player in this league that is dominating all domination. Okay, there's no debate about that. There's no, Rachel was like cutting me off so she could get in her little comment before, whatever. Asia freaking Wilson, 28 points a game. That's first in the league. 11.5 rebounds per game. That's first in the league. 2.8 blocks per game. That's second in the league. That is insane. She is carrying this team. Yes, this team's record does not scream most dominant player, having one of the most dominant years ever. But that's what Asia Wilson is doing. She should be getting screams from the rooftops of every building in Las Vegas. She has been playing out of her mind. And with Chelsea Gray coming back any moment now, by the time this goes live, she'll probably have played. You got to think that this, I was on a BetMGM show the other day, and I was like, look, if you're betting, speaking of which, check our show notes. If you have a gambling problem, please seek help, but use our codes. You can get some nice discounts in the show notes. But I was on the BetMGM show the other day, and they were like, what's going on with Vegas? Can they still win it all? And I'm just like, guys,
Yes.
you can put money down. Now's the time to put money down, because there's no better. You're not going to get better odds for Vegas to win it all.
Yeah.
So put your money on Vegas. Asia's playing amazing. Another player that I want to highlight, the only team to get two players, it's the Phoenix Mercury. Shout out to Phoenix. Brittany Griner, since coming back, she's averaging 21.4 points a game. I'm not going to rank this up with the rest of the league, because I don't think it's fair, considering she hasn't been playing as many games.
Right.
But 21.4 points a game since she's been back, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. And I will throw it out there just because why the heck not? She's leading the league since she's been back in field goal percentage. But also pair her with Kalia Copper, 23.5 a game, 4.4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and 5 30-point games this season. Those are dominant performances. And then a player who I know Rachel wants to give some attention to, Kayla McBride. She's leading the league not only in percentage with 49.5, which is a 4-point drop-off from like 3 games ago, but she's also leading the league in the amount of threes that have been made so far, with 49 threes made so far this season, which is like mind-blowing when you think about Sabrina, Jewel, Taurasi. I mean, Aryeh, we can keep listing these players who are getting headlines for hitting the threes, but Kayla McBride is doing it, and her release is faster than all those other players. Any thoughts on our WNBA dominators?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, A'ja Wilson's putting up career numbers in pretty much every statistical category. I think the only one that might be a little bit down, and that's probably just a culmination of what's been going on with Vegas right now, is just her flat out field goal percentage, but she's still shooting 52%, which any forward big man, whatever, would tell you is extremely efficient. I mean, Asia's been amazing. She's absolutely incredible to be able to be playing at this fast, and I fully believe she'll maintain it. It's just a matter of getting Chelsea Gray back, getting this complete unit back together, and this team finding that edge. But Wilson's playing with it. So as long as Wilson's playing with it, and you've got the MVP, on your team, yeah, I still like Vegas's odds. There's no doubt about that. Kalia Copper has been so impressive. To be able to put up these numbers is one thing, and she was impressive last year in Chicago. Now, we kind of knew that was the case because Chicago was going to have to go to her 18 times a game. But now for Copper to be doing this with the stars around her, and again, like Taurasi, Griner was out for a while, so does that really hinder her numbers? It hasn't so far. Rebecca Allen, she has better players around her, and she's in a new system in year 1. I've been really impressed with Copper and just the production night in and night out. Kayla McBride, and again, we're talking categories. There's like complete dominance, and then there's like, okay, dominance from a standpoint that it's just fascinating what Copper's being able to do in year 1 at a new franchise in a new situation. I knew she'd be really good because she's been really good, but to these types of numbers is a bit shocking to me, and it's fun to watch. Kayla McBride, 11 seasons in the WNBA to be this efficient through 14 games. Someone asked me when I was tweeting about, how some of her numbers, I think it was last week, can she maintain it? I mean, I don't expect her to be shooting above 50% a month from now. I really don't. But to be able to be close to that 50% number, just under, I mean, if you average up, she's right at 50%, 14 games in the season. I mean, that's deadly. And at this phase of her career, I've been so impressed. Definitely dominating from the 3-point line. But yeah, those are just kind of like my initial thoughts coming to mind about just the current WNBA dominators.
And last question before we log off. Lynx, Liberty, Commissioner's Cup, it's going down. You and I got $1 on the line. Who are you taking?
I actually haven't thought about it. And then there's the whole issue of like where they're playing at, right? All the drama of
Yeah, I don't know if anybody saw that. Apparently there's the whole back and forth between the Liberty and the league trying to figure out, change the date. The league basically was like, no, it's okay, whatever. And then when it became clear that they're going to have to move the arena, the Lynx were given the option of playing it at the home arena of the Liberty on a different date, or playing at a different arena in New York. And Cheryl Reeve, being Cheryl Reeve, the utmost ultimate competitor that she is, said, we'll take that and we'll see you at that alternate arena.
As she should. But it probably never should have gotten to the point where Minnesota had that, like even brought to their front desk. Like, I don't even think that should have even gotten to the point. But yeah, definitely interesting developments there when it comes to the Liberty, who have, allegedly tried to talk about this for many, many months now, kind of foreseeing that this could be a conflict and they wouldn't be able to be at home. I don't know. That's going to be an interesting game. I feel, it's a tough one. I don't know. I think I might go with Minnesota with this one. How about you?
All right, so then we're not putting money on the line because we're going on the same team.
Okay, never mind. I'm going New York. All
right, cool. You'll probably win it now. I can't go against my home team. Their first shot at the Commissioner Cup. My family would disown me. My daughter would disown me. No, I mean, I think it's look, it should never have come to that. Oh, that's what it is. The NBA draft or something is the next day at Barclays. So I'm calling BS that they need to not have a game because they need to create a runway, a walkway, a stage in Barclays the next day. I'm sorry. I've seen people turn a basketball court into an ice rink in 2 hours. I've seen teams do much more ridiculous things that are much less safe than this. So I'm sorry. I'm calling BS. I blame many things, I blame the men's professional basketball league that owns the W and screws them over constantly. Rachel, who's your GOAT?
Okay, just because she gets at least a few for everything she just did. Anna.